Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, massive Big Ten matchup. Rutgers heading on the road to play Nebraska. When you look at this football game, like there are two things that just jump out right off the paper at me. One, red zone offense. This Nebraska team really struggling in the red zone, specifically with the field goal kicking unit. And you look at Rutgers, number 3 team in the country on defense in red zone defense. And I think secondly, penalty yards. Rutgers is top 10 in the country in terms of penalty yards given up. Nebraska's 126th. This is one of those football games where it's going to be one of the margins, like executing in the red zone, not taking penalties that kill drives, not taking penalties that give up first downs. That to me seems like a massive storyline in this football game beyond just the matchups on the field. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, talk about some key matchups, some key players. Now, before we get into it, as always, just want to say thank you to you guys. It's been a blast doing these game previews, predictions, the amount of support y'all continue to show to the fellas. It's been amazing. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, let it fly in the comment section. Dale, this is the definition of a game that I think can go either way. So whether you agree with the boys, whether you disagree, let it fly in the comment section. Appreciate you guys. And Dale, without further ado, let's start with this Nebraska offense going up against a Rutgers defense just to emphasize how good they are in the red zone. They are 104th in the country, giving up 6.3 yards per play. Like on average, between the 20s, this Rutgers defense hasn't been all that good. But then you look at how many points they give up per game, only 19.3. That's top 30. Where do you see Nebraska having success against this Rutgers team Saturday afternoon?
One thing I almost want to see is can they hit some explosives? And I feel like Nebraska's been really, really close, whether that's getting guys like Ja'Cory Barney or Jalen Lloyd on reverses or other ways getting them in space, or whether it's hitting someone like Isaiah Nair down the field, a Jamal Banks. Like they have weapons to do it. I don't think they've quite done it yet, obviously, after that UTEP game, really. But it's something, frankly, again, with all the struggles they've had in the red zone and with the kicking game, I'm wondering if they can do it because you saw Rutgers Rutgers gave up some opportunities to Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech couldn't cash them in. I think that'll be something I kind of early watch for.
Hey, best way to avoid red zone struggles, don't spend any time in the red zone. Just score from the 50. That's not a bad recipe for this Nebraska offense. Though what I look at is Rutgers against the run, and I can't believe I'm saying this. Like you think Greg Schiano, you think Rutgers, you think tough along the lines of scrimmage, controlling the clock. Rutgers is giving up 6.7 yards per carry. Washington just ran the football for over 200 yards, 7.1 yards per carry in that football game. Jonah
They've
Coleman
played some hammers of running backs. I mean,
very
Michael
good.
Newton and Jonah Coleman are two of the better running backs in the country. So obviously, you want to somewhat adjust for that. But like even the fact that Washington, I felt like was moving them off the ball, I was very, very surprised.
That's my biggest takeaway. Is like, yeah, you had some really good running backs that made some plays. Washington was physically imposing on the offensive line against this Nebraska front. I think Nebraska has had a lot of success. They've been leaning on Dillon, and rightfully so. In this football game at home, I wonder, especially in the red zone, when the throwing windows get a little bit tight, and if you're Nebraska, you are thinking about how you can score touchdowns in the red zone. Can you lean on that run game? Again, Nebraska's been moving the football incredibly well. They had over 200 yards of 200 total yards in the first half against Purdue, had 0 points. Obviously, red zone issues. When you get inside the 20, that's when I'm looking at the rushing attack. Like, and I think if I'm Matt Rhule, if I'm Coach Sat, I'm looking at my red zone offense and saying it's 4 to score. Like you could run the football 4 times and try to move the chains and get into the end zone because the way we just saw that field goal kicking unit, like I'm trusting Dillon and this Nebraska offense a little bit more than I'm trusting the special teams operation, the kicking operation for this Nebraska team.
And I like to see Nebraska still, and I have a similar thing with Miami almost and how they're playing offense where I get you can throw the ball and it's really, really fun that you can throw the ball, but I'm still a little surprised Nebraska hasn't tried to lean on the rushing attack a little bit more consistently and really commit to it because they have been getting themselves in some bad spots here and there with sacks and some other issues that come about when you try to throw the ball as much as they're doing it. Again, when you're playing a Rutgers team that I'm kind of with you, I would have thought coming into this year would have been a little bit tougher along lines of scrimmage. When you watch what they did against Washington, and I think Nebraska is a heck of a lot better up front than Washington, I really want to see if they can commit to it and steadily try to grind teams down because even against Illinois, they really couldn't do it in the first half. It felt like they started to get to that in the second half, and it did feel like it got a little bit better. They got a little bit more consistent on offense. I want to see if they can commit to it because, again, Dylan Rhule can make it happen, and that's obviously great. But I still think Nebraska should want a bit more of their identity be physicality up front.
Yeah, I like halfway agree. Like the way Dylan's playing, like I am completely okay with this Nebraska offense leaning into him. I think he's playing. Though I had I had high expectations for him, but I think that he has surpassed those expectations. Secondly, what I'm looking at here is what does the running back workload look like for Nebraska? Because from what I've seen from Emmett Johnson, I
Well.
think he's the and if you're Nebraska, like what did Matt Rhule say heading into the season was, hey, we want to find a hot hand. And I think Dante Dowdle, was maybe the hot hand early. I think Emmett Johnson's become the hot hand for this Nebraska offense. So if you're looking for some juice in this rushing attack, like Emmett Johnson's the guy that when he gets to the second level, he's making linebackers miss. Like Dante Dowdle's battering ram, and he's just going to invite contact, and I love that about him. But if you're trying to be a little bit more explosive, arguably a little bit more efficient, like Emmett Johnson has been running the rock really well, and pass protection's been solid. I mean, you just went on the road, third string left tackle essentially. Gunnar Gatula looked pretty dang good. Like you didn't really notice him, and I think that's a good thing for Nebraska fans. You're going up against a good edge rusher in Aaron Lewis there. Dill, let's flip.
That's almost why I think you want to be able to establish the run a little bit because it obviously does help your pass protection. And again, it's not like Nebraska's been at all victimized by pass rush. Illinois didn't do it to him. I wouldn't say Purdue did it to him at all. So it hasn't been an issue. But I think Nebraska can be really, really balanced if they commit to that rushing attack a little more.
I would like to see them commit to it in the red zone more. Good look. I'm really not sitting here being critical of this Nebraska offense because I think it's looked so good moving the football. You just got to be able to score touchdowns in the red zone, which again will be the biggest storyline in this football game by far, and not killing drives with penalties. Those two things. That offensive pass interference against Purdue, absolute garbage. All right, let's move to the Rutgers offense versus Nebraska's defense. Still, it ain't no secret like what Rutgers wants to do on offense. They run the football 63% of the time. That's 11th most in the country. One of the better running backs in Kyle Monungai. A lot of inside zone concepts for Rutgers. Linebacker play is going to have to be really good. John Bullock's been playing really good. And if you're Ty Nash, like this is a big game for them. And if you're Nebraska, what kind of hurt you against Illinois was allowing Illinois to stay on the football field. If you're Rutgers, if you're Nebraska, you got to win on first and second down, force this Rutgers team in some of those obvious throwing situations, and then you got to get off the field. Because, again, I love this Nebraska front seven when it's the starting front seven, when it's the starting defensive line. But when you have to go into the depth of Nebraska, that's when it gets a little bit hairy. Rutgers is going to want to keep you on the field. Like, they're going to want to methodically move the football, kind of grind you down. If you're Nebraska, you can't let that happen, and that starts on getting off the field on third downs, which, again, Nebraska was really good on defense against Purdue, but Purdue was 7-15 on third downs. That's something that I would like to see Tony White in this Nebraska defense do at a much higher level.
And that's going to be about being a little bit more effective against that short and intermediate passing game that, frankly, Illinois had a fair amount of success on them, too. I do wonder what that Nebraska's answer is going to be because I think Kel Kamanis is playing really, really good. That's made, I think, Rutgers much tougher to deal with, especially on that side or on the offense side of the ball, is he's making the throws he's supposed to make. They really didn't have that last year. They were so heavily reliant on the rushing attack. Gavin Wimsatt obviously adding to that, but he really couldn't make the throws that Kel Kamanis is making. And the fact that he's keeping them on the field, I think, is making Rutgers hard to deal with.
100%. I mean, you look at Rutgers again, they don't throw the football that often, but when they do throw it, one, they've been able to move the chains. But I think secondly, they've been pretty dang explosive. They're top 30 in the country in terms of yards per pass attempt. A lot of that passing attempt comes off play action. That is something that hurt Nebraska against Illinois. If you're Nebraska on defense,
because that is really somewhere Rutgers really wants to hit them, and they were killing Virginia Tech with that.
And you have to be disciplined with your eyes. Like, again, they're going to run, and that's kind of what Rutgers tries to do. Like, they try to lull you to sleep. Hey, we're going to show you 6 straight runs, and then we're going to go play action and try to be a little bit explosive, get our guys in space. If you're Nebraska, you have to key into the run. There's no secret about that. But when they do go to play action, You got to be disciplined with your eyes. Rutgers has three difference-making pass catchers, but I do feel pretty comfortable, especially if Tommy Hill is healthy for this football game. The way we've seen Sayre Wright play, hopefully he's healthy for that game. I kind of like your matchups on the outside. Like I think Sayre Wright's been really, really good for Nebraska when he's had to play for Tommy Hill. I think you're keying in on the run. I think you're giving some heavy boxes, trying to stop Rutgers from running the football, and then just figuring out a way to get off the field on third down. If there was like a key for Nebraska on defense here for Tony White, it's like you got to have a third down game plan that's elite, because that is how Rutgers has been moving the football. And really, that's how they're 4-0, how good they've been on third downs. Dill, let's get to the pick here. Rutgers heading on the road to Nebraska. Lines aren't out. We're sitting here Sunday morning. I'm guessing this is going to be within 3 points, probably very close to a pick 'em. Who are you rocking with here?
I think Rutgers is going to be a handful. I think they can do a lot of what Illinois can do, and that's what kind of scares me for Nebraska. Is like I look at the way Altmaier plays; it's kind of similar to what Kaliakmanis is doing. They're not asking him to do a ton, but he's been really, really effective. They can keep themselves on the field. And when they get to like 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, those need to be automatic. You need to be able to get off the field really consistently. In Nebraska's inability to do that, especially with their secondary, just giving up like I wouldn't say easy plays, but plays. If you can't get off the field on Rutgers, that's a recipe for getting beat by this team and getting snuck up on. They didn't do that against Illinois. Give me Rutgers.
I can see it. Like there are a lot of things that make you want to go with Rutgers, right? How good they are red zone defense. Obviously, the penalty discrepancy in this football game. There are a lot of things outside of just what's being played on the football field that point to Rutgers having a really good chance to win this football game, in which they do. Like this is a Rutgers team that just knows how to win. Like you are seeing Greg Schiano kind of build it. It does not look pretty, but they figure out how to win. That's why they're 4-0. Dill, I'm going to go with Nebraska. I think they're the better team.
That
Yes,
is the tough part. Like man to man, Nebraska does feel like
and you look at Rutgers specifically against Washington Friday night, 521 yards of total offense for Washington to 299. And that's over 200 yards more of total offense, but Rutgers won that football game.
but the reason Washington lost are like the same reason.
But I totally agree with that. Totally agree with that. But I think you're seeing Matt Rhule and this Nebraska team make those strides in those areas. Like, yes, the red zone is ferociously concerning if you're Nebraska, but you're seeing Nebraska. I mean, take a look at what we just saw against Purdue. Like that was as tough of an outcome you could have in that first half, but Nebraska just kind of turns it on. I think you're seeing this Nebraska team, although they lost to Illinois, start to figure out how to win games in the second half. And I'm going to go with my eyes. Like I'm going to go with what I think is the better football team, with the team that's at home. It's going to be rowdy. Give me Nebraska to get this one done. Fascinating football game. The boys are fired up. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. Again, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.